No one
It's
ever
getting worse. We
imagined that a
should go.
man who owned
I
half the
know, but
skyline
where?
of the
I'm so
city
tired.
would spend his
We'll find a
nights
place.
watching
I'll keep you
security
safe.
screens alone, coffee gone cold, listening to the quiet hum of a mansion that felt far too empty. He was known as a ruthless billionaire, a man who calculated everything in numbers and contracts. Feelings were weaknesses he had buried long ago, but that night, something small and unexpected disturbed his routine, and it started with the woman everyone else barely noticed, the pregnant maid who kept her head down and spoke only when spoken to. She had been working in the house for months, moving slowly now because of the weight she carried. Most people assumed she was just another employee grateful for a paycheck, but the billionaire noticed things others didn't. How she flinched at sudden noises. How she hid her hands when she thought no one was looking. How every evening, just before her shift ended, she would glance at the clock with a look that felt like fear, not relief. That night, he saw her leave through the side gate instead of the main road. It was late, too late. Something about the way she kept looking over her shoulder unsettled him. Against his own logic, he grabbed his coat and followed at a distance, staying in the shadows, telling himself it was just curiosity. The city lights faded as she walked into a quieter part of town, where the streets were cracked and the buildings leaned with age and neglect. She moved carefully, one hand resting on her belly, whispering words he couldn't hear. The billionaire felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. He had wealth, power, protection. Yet here was a pregnant woman walking alone at night, carrying more than just a child, carrying a secret heavy enough to bend her spine. When she stopped in front of a run-down building with broken windows, his heart sank. This was not where anyone should live, especially not someone about to give birth. He watched as she unlocked a door that barely held together, stepped inside, and disappeared into the darkness. From outside, he heard something that made him freeze. Not laughter, not comfort, just silence, thick and painful. In that moment, memories he thought were long dead began to stir. Of a mother who worked too hard, of promises made and broken, of how easily powerful people look away. He realized this wasn't about control or suspicion anymore. It was about truth, about responsibility, about a life forming in silence while the world rushed past. As he took a step closer to that door, unsure what he was about to uncover, one thought echoed louder than any other. Whatever was waiting for him on the other side would change everything he believed about loyalty, kindness, and himself. And once he opened that door, there would be no turning back. He didn't open the door that night. Instead, he stood there longer than he meant to, listening to the faint sounds from inside, trying to understand why his hands were shaking. For a man who faced billion-dollar risks without blinking, this quiet hallway felt more dangerous than any boardroom. When a light flickered on behind a cracked window, he turned away, forcing himself back into the car before he could do something reckless. The next morning, the mansion felt different to him. Every polished surface, every silent corridor seemed to accuse him of something he couldn't yet name. The pregnant maid arrived as usual, her uniform neat, her eyes tired. She avoided his gaze, moving through her duties with the same careful precision. But now he saw more. The way she paused to catch her breath. The way her shoes were worn thin, soles nearly gone. The way she kept her phone hidden, as if even a simple message could bring trouble. He started asking questions, quietly, not the kind that showed power, but the kind that listened. He learned her name was Lena. She had come to the city alone, answering a job advertisement that promised safety and steady pay. She never spoke of the baby's father. When someone once asked, her face had closed like a locked door. No one pushed further. People rarely do. At night, the images returned to him. That broken building, the silence behind the door. He ordered a background check, then canceled it halfway through. For the first time in years, he was afraid of knowing too much too fast. Part of him feared what the truth might say about the world he controlled and the people he employed. Lena's routine never changed, but her body showed the strain. Some days, she sat for a moment longer than allowed. Other days, he noticed faint marks on her wrist, hidden beneath long sleeves. When she caught him looking, her eyes filled with something close to panic. She shook her head slightly, as if begging him not to ask. That silent plea stayed with him long after she walked away. He followed her again 2 nights later, keeping even more distance this time. The streets were colder, emptier. She took the same path, past closed shops and flickering streetlights, her steps slower now. A man stood near the corner, watching her too closely. The billionaire felt a surge of anger, sharp and unfamiliar. When Lena noticed the man, she lowered her head and hurried inside the building without a word exchanged. From across the street, he watched the door close and stay closed. Minutes passed, then an hour. No lights turned on this time. The man outside eventually walked away, but the unease remained, sinking deeper into Billionaire's chest. Back home, sleep refused to come. Questions circled endlessly. Was she hiding from someone? Was the baby in danger? Had his silence made him complicit in something cruel? For the first time in his life, money felt useless against a mystery built on fear and survival. By morning, he knew one thing for certain. Lena's story was not just about hardship. It was about something chasing her, something she believed would destroy what little safety she had left. And as he watched her carefully fold laundry later that day, he realized the truth was getting closer, whether he was ready for it or not. The days that followed felt stretched, as if time itself was watching and waiting. The billionaire began noticing how the house treated Lena when he wasn't looking. Not cruelty, not openly, just neglect. Doors held open a little less. Voices lowered when she passed. Work added quietly to her list because she never complained. She accepted everything with a nod, one hand always resting protectively on her belly, as if reminding herself why she endured it. From Lena's side, every day was a careful balance. She woke before sunrise, checked her phone for messages that never came but could at any moment. She kept her head down because attention was dangerous. The mansion felt safer than the streets, but safety was temporary. She knew that better than anyone. Every paycheck went untouched in an envelope hidden deep inside her bag. Escape money, she told herself, just in case. The billionaire tried to convince himself to stay out of it. He had a company to run, meetings that shaped markets, people who depended on his decisions. But his focus slipped. During negotiations, his mind drifted to that dark building, to the way Lena whispered to her unborn child when she thought no one could hear. He began researching quietly. Housing conditions, local shelters, legal protections for domestic workers. It surprised him how hard it was to find clear answers. The system he benefited from had cracks he had never bothered to look into. One evening, he overheard a phone call by accident. Lena stood in the back corridor, voice low and trembling. He caught only fragments. "I told you I don't have it yet. Please, I'm trying." Then silence. When she noticed him, she ended the call instantly, her face drained of color. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt heavy, filled with words that refused to come out. That night, the billionaire reviewed security footage from outside the property. He rewound, paused, zoomed in. A familiar figure appeared near the gate on 2 different nights. The same man from the street, always watching, never entering, just waiting. The realization sent a chill through him. This wasn't random. Someone knew where Lena worked. Meanwhile, Lena packed a small bag she kept hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Baby clothes she had bought secondhand, medical papers folded and refolded. So many times the edges were soft. She considered leaving that very night, but fear held her still. Running without a plan could be worse than staying. And the baby kicked gently, as if sensing her turmoil. The billionaire found himself standing outside her room door one evening, his hand raised, unsure whether to knock. He wasn't sure what he would even say. That he knew? That he wanted to help? Power had always made conversations easy before. This time, it felt like a wall. Inside, Lena sat on the bed, listening to footsteps pass. Her heart raced. She had learned long ago that kindness could be real, or it could be another trap. She didn't know which kind lived behind that door. Somewhere between silence and fear, their lives were slowly crossing into something neither of them had planned. The danger circling Lena was closing in, and the billionaire was standing at the edge of a decision that could protect her or expose them both to consequences he was only beginning to understand. The tension crept into every corner of the mansion, quiet but relentless. Even the staff sensed it, though no one spoke aloud. Lena moved more slowly now, her face pale, her hands sometimes trembling as she worked. The baby was due soon. Every step, every breath felt heavier, as if time itself was pressing down on her. She avoided mirrors, avoided conversations, avoided hope. Hope had a way of making pain worse when it was taken away. The billionaire noticed everything. He noticed how Lena flinched when the gate buzzer rang, how she stiffened when unfamiliar cars slowed near the house. He increased security without announcing it. Cameras adjusted. Guards instructed to watch the perimeter more closely. Officially, it was about protecting property. Unofficially, it was about protecting one woman and the life growing inside her. One late afternoon, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the windows. Lena asked to leave early, her voice barely steady. She said she wasn't feeling well. The billionaire watched her walk out, unease twisting inside him. Something felt wrong. The air itself felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Without fully deciding to, he followed again. The streets were darker than usual, rain blurring the lights into long streaks of color. Lena walked faster than he had ever seen her move, one hand clutching her coat closed, the other guarding her belly. Halfway down the block, a car rolled to a slow stop beside her. His heart slammed into his chest. The same car, the same shadow behind the wheel. She didn't look at it. She kept walking. The billionaire pulled over, watching from a distance as the car followed her at a crawl. His phone was in his hand, his thumb hovering, torn between calling for help or stepping in himself. For the first time, his wealth and influence felt clumsy, too slow for the moment unfolding in front of him. Lena reached the old building and fumbled with her keys. The car stopped behind her. A door opened. She froze. From her perspective, the world narrowed to sound and breath. The rain, her heartbeat, the baby shifting, restless. She thought of all the choices that had led her here, all the time she had stayed silent to survive. She thought of the mansion, of the quiet man who watched more than he spoke. She wondered if she had been wrong to trust even that much. The billionaire stepped out his car then, rain soaking through his coat. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stood there, visible, unmissable. Power radiated from him not as anger, but as presence. The man near Lena hesitated, eyes darting between them, calculating. For a long, terrible second, no one moved. Lena turned slowly, shock written across her face when she recognized him. Fear, confusion, and something close to relief flickered in her eyes before she masked again. She shook her head slightly, warning him away, as if trying to protect him from her danger. The rain fell harder. The moment stretched in her, and the truth pressed closer to the surface. Whatever had been chasing Lena was no longer hidden. And as the billionaire took one step forward, he knew the next moments would change all of their lives forever. The man by the car didn't retreat. Instead, he smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried history. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly, not to Lena, but to the billionaire. His voice cut through the rain with unsettling ease. "This is family business." The word hit harder than any threat. Lena gasped, a small, broken sound she couldn't stop. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears mixing with rain as she shook her head, whispering, "Please don't." The billionaire felt the ground shift beneath him. Family business didn't fit the story he had built in his head. This wasn't a stranger stalking a vulnerable maid. This was something deeper, tangled, and far more dangerous. The man continued, eyes never leaving the billionaire. He spoke of debts, of promises made years ago when Lena had no choices left. He hinted at contracts disguised as help, protection that came with invisible chains. The baby, he implied, was part of that arrangement. Not ownership, not words anyone could prove, but obligation. The kind that traps people quietly. Lena's silence confirmed everything. Her shoulders collapsed inward, as if the truth was finally too heavy to carry alone. She whispered that she had tried to run, that she had taken a job at the mansion because it was the first place no one asked questions. She believed distance and time could erase what followed her. She was wrong. The billionaire felt a surge of fury unlike anything he'd known. Not the cold anger of a hostile takeover, but something raw and protective. He realized then that Lena's fear wasn't just for herself. It was for her unborn child. Whatever agreement existed, whatever shadow loomed over her life, it threatened the baby most of all. The man stepped closer, rain dripping from his jacket. "You have no idea what you're stepping into," he warned. Power doesn't help when the rules are already written. That was when headlights flared behind them. Another car, then another. The street suddenly felt too narrow, too exposed. The billionaire's phone buzzed in his pocket. Security alerts from the mansion, messages he hadn't seen yet. Pieces were moving faster than he could control. From Lena's perspective, everything blurred. The pain in her back sharpened suddenly, stealing her breath. She pressed a hand to her belly, fear spiking as a dull ache spread. This was not how the night was supposed to go. She had planned to endure quietly, just a little longer. Now everything was unraveling at once. The billionaire noticed her struggle instantly. The conflict in his chest split wide open. Walk away and protect himself, or step fully into a story that could destroy reputations, careers, and lives. He moved to her side without thinking, shielding her from the man's gaze. That simple act changed the air. The man's smile vanished. "If you do this," he said softly, "there's no going back." Rain poured harder, the sound nearly deafening. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed, distant but growing closer. Lena looked up at the billionaire then, eyes filled with fear and a fragile hope she hated herself for feeling. Whatever secrets had bound her until now were breaking open, and as the street filled with light and shadows, one truth became clear. The real danger wasn't just what the billionaire was about to uncover, but what it would cost him to protect it. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the rain like a blade. The man's confidence faltered for the first time as headlights flooded the narrow street. 2 security vehicles pulled in fast, doors opening almost in unison. The billionaire hadn't called them just now. He had done it earlier, the moment instinct told him this night would not end quietly. Power, when used right, could still protect. The man raised his hand slowly, his voice calm but strained. He claimed misunderstandings, old agreements, words taken out of context. But when one of the guards addressed him by name and mentioned an ongoing investigation tied to financial exploitation and coercion, the mask finally cracked. Lena's knees nearly gave out. She hadn't known there was already a case. She hadn't known anyone was watching from the shadows besides him. As the man was escorted away, shouting that this wasn't over, Lena broke down. Months of fear spilled out in quiet sobs she tried to hide, embarrassed by her own relief. The billionaire stayed beside her, holding an umbrella over her shaking form, saying nothing because words would only fall short. In that moment, the conflict that had stalked her for so long finally loosened its grip. An ambulance arrived soon after. The rain had soaked Lena through, and the stress had taken its toll. As she was helped inside, she clutched the billionaire's sleeve, panic flashing across her face. He promised he would follow. And he did. Hours later, under harsh hospital lights, the truth settled into something real. Lena was safe. The baby was safe. Authorities confirmed that the so-called family obligation had no legal standing, just manipulation dressed up as control. The main threat had been removed, and for the first time in a long while, Lena allowed herself to breathe. The billionaire handled the aftermath quietly, just as he did everything else. Legal support was arranged. A new home, secure and private. Lena was offered time, care, and choice, things she hadn't been given in years. The mansion no longer felt like a workplace to her, but a chapter that had closed. But just when everything seemed resolved, when relief softened into gratitude, the final truth emerged. Late one night, as the billionaire reviewed documents connected to the investigation, a name stopped him cold. The man who had threatened Lena wasn't just a predator exploiting desperation. He had once worked for one of the billionaire's own companies years ago, dismissed during a restructuring that saved millions. The fallout from that decision had rippled outward, quietly, cruelly. Lena hadn't been random. Her path had crossed his long before he ever noticed her. The realization hit hard. The danger she faced had grown from a system he helped build. Even if unknowingly, he sat there in silence, understanding that saving her now didn't erase the past. It only changed the ending. Weeks later, as Lena held her newborn child, safe and free, She thanked him for following her that night. He didn't correct her. He simply nodded, knowing the truth was heavier than gratitude. Sometimes the biggest twists aren't about who the villain is, but about how close the hero was to the cause. And as the baby slept peacefully, the billionaire understood something that would stay with him forever. Some discoveries don't just change lives. They change the way you see the world and yourself long after the danger is gone. The days that followed were quieter, but not empty. Lena stayed in a small, sunlit apartment arranged by the billionaire's legal team, close to the hospital and far from the streets that once haunted her nights. The newborn slept most of the time, wrapped in soft blankets, unaware of the fear that had surrounded his arrival. For Lena, every breath he took felt like a small miracle. The anxiety did not disappear overnight, but it softened, replaced by something fragile and new: trust. The billionaire visited only once at first, keeping his distance, unsure of his place in this new chapter. When he did come, he didn't bring grand gestures or expensive gifts. He brought groceries. He asked how she was feeling. He listened. That was when Lena finally spoke freely, explaining how desperation had shaped her choices, how she had believed silence was the only way to protect her child. She admitted she never expected help to come from someone like him. He admitted he never expected to care this deeply about a life outside his carefully controlled world. The investigation continued quietly, and with it came changes. Policies inside his company were reviewed, especially those affecting vulnerable workers. What began as one story turned into many, as others found the courage to speak up. The billionaire did not make speeches about it. He simply acted, understanding now that responsibility didn't end with success. It started there. Lena chose not to return to the mansion. Instead, she enrolled in a training program funded anonymously, determined to build a future on her own terms. The billionaire respected that choice. Support, he learned, didn't mean control. It meant stepping back when someone was ready to stand. Months passed. The city moved on, unaware of the quiet transformation that had taken place. One afternoon, Lena and her baby sat in a park, sunlight filtering through the trees. The child laughed for the first time, a sound so pure it made her cry. In that moment, the past finally loosened its hold. She was no longer just a pregnant maid running from shadows. She was a mother with a future. The billionaire watched from a distance that day, unseen, feeling something settle inside him. He had followed Lena out of suspicion. He had stayed out of conscience. And he had changed because of the truth he almost ignored. Power had once defined him. Now accountability did. The story didn't end with applause or headlines. It ended with quiet choices made every day. Lena raising her child with dignity. A billionaire learning that wealth means little without empathy. And a reminder that sometimes the most life-changing discoveries happen not when we look for answers, but when we finally choose not to look away. In the end, it wasn't about secrets or status. It was about seeing someone fully, stepping into discomfort, and letting compassion lead where money never could. And that was a discovery that truly changed everything.